Today I'm going to show you how to make a tank top from a damaged jumper. Your jumper will set off like that and it's damaged, particularly if they're damaged on the sleeve, because we're going to cut the sleeves off, and you will end up with a tank top which will look something like this, but this is only 3/4 finished. So the first thing you have to do is to cut the sleeves off. Now you don't want to cut the shoulder seam because you're going to need that. So you're going to cut the sleeves off. Now I'm just going to put a nick in the top of the sleeve like that. We want to have the sleeve seam, which you can see there, we want to have that on the cut off sleeve. We don't want to have it on the jumper. So I'm just going to cut out one sleeve. Now the next thing we have to do is we have to take off this rib on the neck. Now for starters, I suggest you just cut off the rib, just close to where the ribbing ends. You've now got the beginnings of your tank top. This doesn't fray, so you could, hey presto, you've got a tank top. But if you want it to look neater and more like a finished garment, then you will fold in the edges and sew them. Now that makes a neater, more durable job, because this is very stretchy. You can see already, if you were going on over your head, it would soon go, not lie flat. Now you've got to consider that if you're going to fold it over and hem it, then it's going to make the neckline bigger when you've folded it in. So you wouldn't cut it as low as you might if you were not going to fold it in. So the next stage is to fold in a hem. I do it about 3/4 to an inch, and it really doesn't matter, it's not that important, just as long as you've pressed it like that. Now because it's by nature not very stable, I have then tacked it just loosely with a running stitch, and then that holds it in place, and then I'm going to sew it. Now I'm going to use a contrast thread today because you can see more easily what I'm doing, and I'm going to use a zigzag stitch on the machine. Now if you're not used to sewing cashmere or wool or stretchy fabrics, you may need to have a practice, and you could practice on something that wasn't necessarily your cashmere jumper, although you might have your sleeve that you've cut off. Equally, cotton t-shirt would do. And you do need to practice on a piece because all machines are different. You may have a setting on your machine for stretch fabrics, in which case that you just set it for stretch fabrics. If you haven't, you will need to experiment and loosen your tension a little bit, and if you can, reduce your pressure foot pressure. Now you don't need to be exact about how much is left when you've sewn from the top side, because this can be trimmed very easily after stitching to look neat. This is more important, so you've got to guide it and use the marks on your needle plate. Now you will have different mark settings, and some of you will have inches and some of you will have centimetres, or you can use your side of your foot, and some feet are wider than others. So again, it doesn't matter. What does matter is that you're consistent all the way around. And it's probably best to start at the back because that's more unobtrusive. Now I think this is not quite wide enough, this foot, so I'm going to go to the second mark on the needle plate. So that's giving me 1/2 centimetre at the side, and I'm going to set off with my zigzag and sew around. If your machine's set with too high a pressure foot pressure and too high a tension, it will be difficult to go around the corners, and you'll find that your machine won't feed round the corners very well. So it is essential to practice. Now the other thing, which is for those of you who do sew quite a lot, you can also do this with a twin needle, and you just get 2 rows of straight stitching on the top and a row of zigzagging on the back. That has a built-in stretch, so that's a good way of doing it as well. So just meet up with your stitching, and obviously if you're using a thread that's the same colour, easier to disguise your join. I'm just going to do a back stitch. And you would probably use the same coloured thread underneath, and you might even want to use the thread, the colour of the fabric underneath, even if you did a contrast on top. We've taken out the backing, and then the other thing which we have to do, and this is easier when you've pressed it all flat, and don't be frightened of this, it's not as hard as it looks, but you're going to actually trim this to make it look neater. I mean, you could leave it if you don't fancy doing this, but it makes it look neater. So you're just going to trim off, so that looks much neater. And then you quite simply repeat that on there, and on there. Now then, you press your stitching on the wrong side. I'm pressing it lightly, but I am pressing it not like that. I am ironing it, but it is light. You don't want a heavy pressure at all. And really, it's very light, and you're hovering with the steam, just sort of hovering on the right side as well. Just hover. I think you can actually see how it transforms it. But you do not want to overdo the pressing, or else you will stretch your edge and flatten your pile on your fabric, and it won't look good. I think you'll agree that this is a good way to recycle a damaged garment and make it into something quite trendy and wearable. And we also have some other tips on recycling on our channel.